It's Open Week, golf fans. We're heading across the seas to England for the next major championship and the last one we'll have for the next 9 months. I'm super stoked. We get to see all the best players in the world. A few have withdrawn due to some travel concerns, but a majority of the guys that matter are going to be there. And we have a ton of huge Draftkings contests to try and take down for DFS this week. We're coming in off a huge week with Lucas Glover as a winner, one of our core picks last week. Somebody I thought that would putt well on bent grass surface. He came through, got us a win. Also got myself a winning ticket on that, so hope you guys did as well. But our models are coming in absolutely clutch. We've come in with 2 straight winners. We had Cam Davis at the Rocket Mortgage, obviously the winner from last week. And in this video, we're going to be previewing the Open Championship and looking to build that momentum for a 3rd straight week. I'm going to give some basic details about the course, the field that we're going to be seeing this week. I'm going to be giving a full course breakdown, going over all the specifics for Royal St. George's, and then going over my top 3 key metrics for analysis for this year's Open Championship. As per usual on the channel, my analysis is going to be data-based with an analytical approach to take on daily fantasy sports. I have a lot of experience as an electrical engineer, and I use a lot of the techniques, tools that I've learned over the years to help take on simplifying daily fantasy sports. In this video, again, we're going to be characterizing Royal St. George's, figuring out what types of players are going to do well and that have done well at Royal St. George's and the Open Championship in the past. And we're going to be using that to predict who's going to do well this week and who's a good value. When we take a look at my modeling, it's centered around course characterization and fit, like I mentioned before. It also uses a lot of recent form. I use a lot of specific analytics like shots gained splits on certain types of grass. I take a lot of weather statistics in, apex height, the whole 9 yards. So I don't just cover the PGA Tour. I go into the same level of depth into things like the NFL, NBA, UFC, and more. So if you're looking for a more analytical approach to taking on daily fantasy sports, a more data-based approach, make sure to check out my channel. I have plenty of content for you guys. On top of my video content, I also do have a Patreon page. Right now I have it up for the PGA Tour, also for my UFC projections, where I give a projection for all the golfers in the field, all the fighters on a slate. I also give ownership projections, game theory notes. I'm going to be adding a lineup builder for every sport. I'm also going to be adding more visualizations, more tools that I use myself to win money in DFS to make you guys even more profitable with your own games. With all that being said, with all of that out of the way, let's hop into the preview for this year's 2021 Open Championship. This is going to be our first Open Championship since 2019 in Shane Lowry's breakthrough major win, which was a lot of fun to see. I loved seeing the crowds out there. And this time around, we're going to have the fans back as well. We're going to have 32,000 fans at Royal St. George's. It's going to feel like a real major, kind of like it did at Kiowa Island. And I expect a very similar energy to what we saw at that event, which was absolutely spectacular, obviously. We're obviously going back to Royal St. George's, like I said. We're going to be seeing all the best players in the world. Like I mentioned before, a few have dropped out, most notably Bubba Watson, Matthew Wolff, Kevin Na, I believe, some other guys as well that have some, I guess, worries about the travel restrictions, don't agree with them or whatnot, decided to take off the event. There's going to be more than enough alternates, more than enough people that have qualified to get in there that are going to be willing participants, so I'm not too worried about those guys. And besides, none of the top 10 players of the world have withdrawn, so we're getting all the cream of the crop. We're also going to see a lot of the guys that played at the Aberdeen Scottish Open last week. Aside from the PGA Tour event that we saw at the John Deere Classic, there was the Aberdeen Scottish Open. It had 25 of the top 50 players in the world, I believe 7 of the top 10 players in the world. So a lot of the guys went over there, tried to get used to some links golf. I ended up watching 3 out of the 4 rounds Friday through Sunday, and I definitely got to take some pointers on how some of the players played that type of style. Most notably, Scotty Scheffler played it extremely well. I did not expect that. I thought his game was more of an American-style game. Justin Thomas held his own. John Rahm played well. Now, that was expected. He's from Spain, one of the best players, if not the best player in the world. Matthew Fitzpatrick played well. Now, he's from England, very used to that kind of course, but that's great to see. He was one of my picks for the week. But overall, I'm really looking forward to what we have this week. On top of having the studs in the field, we have a lot of the international standouts, people from the Asian tours, people from South African tours, all kind of international players that are really good. A lot of them are going to be undervalued this week. We haven't seen them very often. Some of the guys from Japan we've only seen in Open Championships or PGA Championships, and as a result, there's going to be an edge to be found with some of those guys. Most notably, I forget the guy's last name. He's from Japan. He's an up-and-coming prospect. He's only played 8 rounds of measured major golf, but those have been the only events he's played in. So a lot of his statistics look a little bit down. He's slightly negative in each category. But if you put him on a regular PGA Tour event, put him on a regular European Tour event, I'm sure he'd be gaining in almost every category. So some of those guys are going to be interesting this week. We're going to have 2 years worth of qualifiers in the field as well. So because we didn't have a 2021 Open Championship, the guys that qualified in 2019 for the 2020 and obviously over the past year as well are all going to be in the field. As a result, we're going to have a stronger field this time around. A lot of times we get more ceremonial past champions. We get some just ceremonial invitees, special invitees, exemptions, those kind of things that get in that are more for the fans and locals. Some of them are just past PGA Tour champions, players, that kind of stuff. We're not getting those this time around. And while that might be a bummer for some of the local fans that'll be there, some of the guys that want to see some of their old favorites on TV, when it comes to just quality golf and seeing the best players play, that's what we're getting this week. It's going to be a lot more fair. Everyone is in the field for a reason. And that's it for the field this week. Obviously, there's a lot to look forward to there. We're going to be going into some of the specifics with the field with my player picks later on today. But now let's talk about the course. Let's specifically go over how it's going to play this week over in England. And now for the course breakdown. For this week's course, we have Royal St. George's, a links design in Kent, England, that is a par 70 at 7,189 yards. It's also a course with a lot of length. And while it seems like a lot of length on paper, if we take a look at how it plays typically, it's a very firm and fast golf course. That's not just the greens, that's also the fairways. Back in 2011, we had 40 to 50 yards of run out on a lot of the fairways. As a result, a lot of the longer hitters ended up in pot bunkers, in the fescue grass, and it made for a really interesting week off the tee. If we take a look at how the perfect drives were playing last time, even some of the best hitters and some of the best tee shots were being penalized. This time around, the superintendent has said that's not going to happen. It was borderline unfair last time around. The fairways resembled more of a U.S. Open look, especially a U.S. Open that had gone a little bit off the rails. The superintendent said that they're going to be watering the fairways, making sure that they're at least playable this time around. And he half-heartedly joked, saying that if you hit it in the fairway, it's at the very least going to stay in the primary rough. So, they're at least trying to make it slightly more fair there. And I definitely think it's going to have an impact on play this week. And I also think it's going to play relatively similar to the greens that fairways we saw at Kiawah Island, where they could be really firm and fast, but the PGA Tour made sure to make them a little bit more fair. The greens this week are bent grass greens. They're the same type of greens we saw at the John Deere Classic at TPC Deer Run. They tend to help shaky putters, guys that are a little bit bad at putting, people that have negative shots gained putting numbers over the years. They tend to have a little bit of a rebound week at this type of surface. It was designed in 1877, over 150 years ago, and as a result, it's had plenty of redesigns. It's had 7 or 8 redesigns over the years. As a result, it's an almost perfect golf course. Almost every single hole goes a different direction. You get different wind looks as a result. It really tests every single part of your game. There's not a specific ball flight that does well here. Fades, draws. You pretty much have to be able to hit everything at this golf course. It's also a highly bunkered course. You have extreme edges on all of these bunkers. It's very much a links design. Even the fairway bunkers are borderline unfair. There's definitely going to be some lies people get where you're going to have to hit out sideways, even backwards, just to avoid hitting 2 to 3 shots out of a bunker. People that are bad in bunkers, people that have historically struggled to get out of these, you're going to want to avoid this week. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Jason Kokrak. Couldn't even get out of the Colonial bunkers. You're not going to have fun this week. We also have a very, very large green size on average. So if we take a look at the greens, they're some of the biggest greens that we'll see around the world, but don't let that trick you. They have a ton of undulation. They're tiered to a very, very extreme degree, even more so than some of the Augusta National greens. So as a result, being very precise with your irons, making sure you miss at the right spots is going to be vital. There's also some drop-offs and some slopes on the greens that will take your balls into pot bunkers. So you can hit a green, have a green in regulation seemingly, and have your ball sweep into trouble. So there's a lot of complexity with this golf course. Again, it kind of reminds me of Augusta National. Pete Dye's designs for sure have that same type of feel to them. When we take a look at the last time we saw Royal St. George's, again, Darren Clark ended up winning the contest, but he did that only hitting 54% of greens in regulation. And while that may seem that, iron play is not very important, it is still going to be important. It's the most important stat when we look at any golf course around the world. It just shows you the difficulty of this event. Even if you're playing well, even if you're hitting the ball in the fairway, these greens have so much slope that it's hard to even hold them at times. So we're looking at guys that are good around the green. You're going to be saving par a lot more than you're trying to putt for birdie. And we're really looking for grinders this week. You're even going to have a lot of shots from less than 100 yards, 4 and up and down. If you get stuck in these pot bunkers, you're hitting a sandwich, just trying to advance it 40, 50 yards down the fairway and make your par that way. So guys that are good with their wedges, people that are good around the green are going to definitely have a leg up this week. And that will reflect itself in my key metrics here in a little bit. Last major factor we're going to have this week is going to be the weather. I mean, it became a huge factor in 2011. There was relatively no wind on Thursday, Friday, also on Sunday. But if you take a look at the Saturday scoring average, when there was a lot of rain, there was a lot of wind as well. Ended up shooting 4.5 strokes over par. So typically it was shooting about 1 over par, but still a hard golf course. But when it gets windy out there, it becomes brutal or even borderline unfair. Jack Nicklaus has been quoted as saying that this is the worst open venue. I think he only believes that because he missed the cut every time he played at Royal St. George's. So if the Golden Bear is having trouble here, obviously it's a hard golf course. It's a test for anyone, and it's definitely going to be a grinder's golf course. And now for our top 3 key metrics for our modeling. These 3 key metrics are going to be what I factor the most into my custom modeling this week. Of course, I factor a lot more than just these 3 key metrics into my modeling, but I want to give you guys an idea of the types of players that I'm looking for, at least with these 3 key stats. Before we hop into those, we're going to have a bonus key stat for this week, so I'm cheating a little bit here. Our bonus key stat is going to be shots gained putting on bent grass. Now, last week we saw just how important making this type of adjustment can be. If we just use shots gained putting numbers, Lucas Glover looks like a horrible putter. He's historically loses about half a stroke per round on the surfaces. But if we took a little bit of a deeper look last week, Lucas Glover had a lot going for him. He historically gains an extra 0.23 strokes per round on the greens on bent grass and was coming into the event over the last 7 events, gaining 0.23 strokes per round. So he was able to gain over half a stroke putting per round at the John Deere Classic. That had a lot to do with why he won. And if we took a look at the numbers, it made perfect sense. He was coming in with a hot putter. He was very good on the bent grass surface. So we're obviously looking for those same kind of players this week. Guys that are at least decent with the putter, if not great putters, that do even better on this surface. There's a lot to be said for having that familiarity. I have a lot of familiarity with the Bermuda grass surface. Being able to read the grain, being able to read a lot of the lines and whatnot is an art form. And from surface to surface, there's intricacies, there's changes you have to make, adjustments you have to make from surface to surface. So it's an underrated part of statistical analysis, in my opinion. A lot of guys overlook it, think there's just too much to it. Now, I'm not saying to make all your decisions based on how somebody does on a putting surface, but it should definitely have a small factor. Now, getting into those key metrics I mentioned. At number 3, we have shots gained around the green. Now, I debated putting it at number 2 or even number 1 on this list because it is the highest correlated stat for success. One of the ways that I try to find these key metrics is with a linear regression model. That is how I got to shots gained around the green. What I do is I correlate a player's finishing position to all of their 4 major shots gained categories. I do that for every player in the field, and I do it for every event and every iteration of an event that we have. And as we get 4 or 5 events in for sample size, there's a lot of trends that start to come out. Certain golf courses are going to prioritize approach play off the tee play. It just matters at the the Open Championship here. It ends up being around the green play. It comes in at number 2 out of 56 on tour in terms of events, only trailing the Arnold Palmer Invitational in terms of its importance. And it makes a lot of sense, obviously. Now, this isn't just for Royal St. George's. This is for all Open Championship events. But they're all played on a link style. They're all played in very similar weather conditions, et cetera, et cetera. And being able to get up and down is just a staple of the Open Championship. If you take a look at Royal St. George's, that's obviously going to be true as well. We have the same type of severe bunkering, fescue grass, undulating greens, etc. And like I said before, we're going to see 3 to 4 times more around the green shots than players are used to seeing. The winner is only going to hit 55 to maybe even 60% of their greens in regulation. So as a result, being a wizard around the green is going to separate you from the field. And number 2, we have driving accuracy. A statistic I don't usually lean on for my analysis. We've seen it 2 or 3 times over the last month. the Travelers, we saw it. We saw it last week as well at the John Deere Classic. But Royal St. George's, it's going to be even more important. Like I mentioned, there's fescue grass all over the place. Even missing the fairway by 10 to 15 yards can be absolute danger, can be an absolute nuclear round. There's the pot bunkers that just swallow your balls. You're hitting out sideways half the time out of those. So making sure you can avoid those penalty areas is going to be vital. On top of the importance that we saw in 2011 of hitting fairways, it's going to be even more important this time around. So like I mentioned, the superintendent plans on making the fairways a little bit more damp, putting some water on them, making sure they're receptive enough to hold golf balls. If players are going to be accurate off the tee, they're going to be rewarded this time around. They're still going to be getting that run out, like I said. They are still firm. Even if they get them a little bit more damp, they still are going to roll out a lot more than we're used to seeing. So I'm not necessarily looking for driving distance this week. You're going to be getting a lot of that bonus on the ground. It's going to be a lot more important to keep it in the short stuff to get that extra rollout and to avoid those penalty areas. At number 1, we have shots gained approach. Now, this is a staple in my analysis. I'd say it's my number 1 key stat about 90% of the time, and I tend to rely on it even more at courses we don't see all the time. Now, we see Royal St. George's about once every single 10 years. It's changed over the years as well. It's gone through a lot of redesigns. And anytime we have a little bit of mystery with an event, we don't have a lot of data to rely on, shots gained approach is going to be the key stat to go to. It's just the number 1 key stat at any golf course in terms of your success. The guy that plays the best with his irons always tends to top 5 in any event, barring any severe leaking in any other category. And like I mentioned before, a lot of these greens are tiered. They're undulated, to the extreme. They look like Augusta National greens. So making sure you hit greens is going to be important, but even more vitally, hitting the right part of greens. If you hit it at the wrong tier of some of these, you're looking at 2, maybe even a 3 putt at the very best. And having that precision is just going to make all the difference. You're going to have guys this week that seemingly gain on approach. You're going to see them have positive shots gained numbers, and it's just not going to tell the complete truth. If you're hitting the ball to 50, 60 feet on the other side of the green, while it may look like a green regulation, while you might slightly gain in the shots gained category, you're probably going to 3-putt that hole and lose a stroke and a half, 2 strokes putting. It's going to be a little bit weird for our shots gained numbers this week, but the guys that are very technically sound with their irons are going to have a huge advantage. If we're looking at the ranges where players are going to have their most shots, I'm taking a look at the 150 to 175 yard range and the 175 to 200 yard range. Again, it's a relatively long golf course. You're not going to be able to overpower this and hit wedges into every green. In fact, I think the only wedges you're going to be hitting are going to be when you have to lay up or you have a forced layup. So I am emphasizing those longer iron ranges. I'm also looking for players that can flight their ball low. Seemingly with firm greens, with firm fairways, you'd want a high ball flight. That's just not the case at Royal St. George's. The greens are that firm. They're essentially built directly on top of the bedrock. So even if you hit the ball high, they're going to trampoline forward. They're also not flat. They have the undulation. So even if you come in high, you're hitting a sloped green. It's going to bounce left and right like crazy. So if anything, you want to bring it in low and let it roll up like a putt. People that are good from the 175 to 200 yard range, I think also have a distinct advantage at Royal St. George's. So it's a little bit nuanced, so we'll go through it. So when you're hitting a ball 175 to 200 yards, there is no way to stop it on a dime. Usually those are long par 4s, they're iron shots into par 5s, etc. And you're usually hitting a ball, letting it bounce up 10 to 20 yards and finish around a location. Every single shot at Royal St. George's is going to look like that this week. Even your 9 irons, even your 8 irons, your 7 irons, they're going to bounce out 10 to 20 yards. You're going to have to play them like a chip shot. So as a result, the guys that have that innate ability to hit those long irons to close proximities, that can judge those bounces, they're going to have an innate advantage. So I think focusing on those longer iron ranges not only lets you focus on the shots they're going to be seeing, it lets you encapsulate that bump and run mentality as well. So that's why it comes in at number 1, and it's definitely going to be my staple for this week's 2021 Open Championship. So that's all I've got for this research video for the 2021 Open Championship. I'm going to have my top 6 picks for this year's Open out later on this afternoon. It's going to have my top pick in each of the pricing tiers, my spend up, second man in, value tier, etc. So make sure to look out for that later on. I'm also going to have my videos out tomorrow on Tuesday. That's going to be my top value plays. And on Wednesday, we're also going to have my ownership reaction. In that video, we'll go over my fades and sleeper picks. So you're going to get a full dose of content this week for the Open Championship. Let me know in the comments who you guys have as your favorite play on the slate this week, who you have winning the Open Championship. If you guys are able to get that player right, pick the winner, I'm going to give you guys a free month of my Patreon projections. Again, it has the projections for all 156 players in the field, all their ownership numbers, some notes on pretty much every player as well. It's only $1 right now, so if you don't end up winning, you can join that way. It's a great value. But make sure to leave a comment to see if you guys can win. With all that being said, good luck with your DraftKings lineups, guys. There's a lot of contests, a lot of money to be made out there for the Open, and it's going to be a lot of fun as well. So I'll see you guys next week.